The other night, a player sent me a DM on Discord stating that the Warden faction in Foxhole was on strike. They had heard that the popular Warden clans were refusing to participate in any more wars until changes were made to the game. At first, I refused to believe that the whole faction would go on strike, but because War 116 was one of the shortest wars we had seen in a while, and because the current War 117 was looking like it could be even shorter, I decided I would ask around and do some research to see what was actually going on within the Warden faction. Player strikes in Foxhole have actually happened before. Back in War 87, a logistics strike occurred. Logistics players from both the Warden and the Colonial side joined together. They formed a group called LOGI, or Logistics Organization for General Improvement. During this strike, players put aside their differences and came together to address gameplay mechanics that made the game awful. The ultimate goal was to make Logi more fun and less work. The Logi group created a list of demands and gathered 1,800 signatures from both factions. If the demands of these players were not met by the devs by January 10th, 2022, the logistics players would not play during War 87. The devs never responded, and when the war started, supplies were not delivered to the front. What the logistics players did in War 87 was a true player-driven strike. From what the player reported to me about the Warden strike, I didn't believe that this was the same thing that had happened in War 87 with the logistics strike. I would have heard more about it from other players, and I feel like there would have been more of a buzz going around. I started to do a bit of digging and some research of my own. I began my research with War 116. War 116 was the shortest war that we had had in the last year and a half. It had only lasted 15 days. I initially shrugged this off because the war before that, War 115, was 42 days long, one of the biggest wars we've seen since January of this year. I figured that players were merely taking a break from such a long, exhausting war. But ever since War 117 started 10 days ago, something has seemed off. The Colonials for War 117 were once again marching their way through the map uncontested in most regions, and the Wardens were once again losing territory very quickly. This didn't seem right. Maybe certain Warden clans were on strike, or maybe they were still taking an extended break because War 116 was so short. I started asking around to see what other players thought was going on. At first, a lot of players reported that there was an imbalance of population going on between the Wardens and the Colonials. Population imbalance in Foxhole refers to a situation where one faction has significantly more active players than the opposing faction, leading to an uneven gameplay experience. This imbalance can cause several issues. The faction with more players can easily dominate battles, control more territory, and maintain superior logistics and supply lines, making it difficult for the underpopulated faction to compete effectively. This is what a lot of players thought happened during War 116, and what we might be seeing again for War 117. Players on the underpopulated side feel overwhelmed and demotivated, which can sometimes lead to players having a less enjoyable experience and in some cases causing them to quit, or even switch factions, which can make the population imbalance even worse. When players decide to join the winning side because they are frustrated with being on the losing side, this can cause wars to end quickly if the larger faction rapidly overwhelms the smaller faction, again as we've seen in the last two wars. The developers do have systems in place to incentivize players to join the faction with less players, but personally I think those mechanics are still lacking to make up for the population imbalance. I don't blame the devs for not knowing the perfect solution. Managing population balance between two factions seems like a hard thing to perfect. Are there other games out there that know how to manage population sizes between factions? What mechanics do they have in place? I continued to ask my Warden friends what they thought was going on. Was it the Warden culture? Was it something to do with equipment or balance? A couple of players reported to me that population was not the issue. The Wardens had plenty of players on the battlefield. The only problem was that these players on the battlefield were all very new. Towards the end of War 115 and during War 116, there was a huge influx of new players that found Foxhole and had started playing the game. Most of these new players are now playing in their second war ever, and most of them have picked the Warden faction. Of course, having new players join Foxhole is not bad for the game, but when Foxhole does have a lot of new players that join, there can be some growing pains. One player reported to me that the vet versus new player imbalance is clearly visible on the battlefield. They also wanted to state that they love seeing a mass of new players derping around, but when you're constantly getting steamrolled by experienced players, it's hard to stick around and commit to a front or a battle. Veteran population in Foxhole can be one of the biggest factors in a war. It doesn't matter if you have 100 privates on your battlefield. If none of them know what they're doing or how to successfully push a front forward, how do you expect to win? If you've played other ranked video games, picture it as though the Wardens have a bunch of bronze, silver, and gold players on their team, with maybe one diamond or one grandmaster player trying to lead them all to victory. They face against a colonial force who has a stacked team of diamond players or grandmaster players and maybe one or two bronze, silver, or gold players on their team. If that analogy doesn't make sense, let's try a MOBA analogy. You can sometimes think of Foxhole like a game of League of Legends. If you think of the map like lanes in League of Legends, you have the top lane, the mid lane, and the bottom lane. The people that go around the map doing quick response force or QRF is your jungle, and your support is your Logi players. If you have a top and mid lane that can carry you through the game, it's hard for the opposing team if they only have a bottom lane carry. Or if you have brand new players playing the support role, it's going to be hard for any real logistics supplies to get to the front. I could go on longer with these examples, but hopefully you get it. Now, this type of situation of new players versus vet players is not something new for Foxhole. 5 to 6 months ago, we had an influx of new players, and it happened then as well. It's just something that occurs from time to time within Foxhole when a lot of new players join. We normally just have to wait it out for 2 or 3 wars for those new players to become experienced players. The new players will eventually become the new generation of vet players. And eventually the old vet players that left to take a break will return and we will have an epic war once again. You can never really predict when these ebbs and flows within Foxhole will happen with population, and when the vet players and new players are playing. The truth of the matter is, sometimes your faction will simply just suck, but that does not mean you should give up hope. If you have the motivation and the time and the persistence, you should work towards teaching these new players how to fight and how to play the game, so that way they can come back stronger each war. If you don't have that kind of motivation, that's okay. Take a break from the game and go play some other games. The last reports I heard from a couple players said that big clans were just taking a break until the next major update. That burnout from previous long wars had finally caught up to them. A lot of players said that they were spending their time playing other games like Conveyor Belts 2, WWE in Space, and soon the new Factorio Space Age. For those of you that are just simply taking a break out there playing different games, I hope that you're enjoying them and having fun. Foxhole will always be here, of course. There will always be front lines to supply, salvage to be mined, and new players to run over. If you need a break, make sure you take a break. Also, let's put an end to the rumors that Wardens are on strike. I don't think we found that one to be true at all. When Foxhole has another real strike like War 87, we will all know about it and we will really feel it in game. As always with videos like this, please check the date that it was released. What I talked about in this video may no longer be an issue in the game, or feel free to comment and ask me directly if it's still an issue or if things still need to be fixed. And to those Wardens out there that might be low on morale, just know the Wardens still have technically won more wars than the Colonials overall. The current score is 59 wars won for the Wardens and 57 for Colonials. So even if you lose War 117, you're still ahead for now. Remember that you can still have fun in Foxhole anytime. Pick a role that sounds fun and go out and do it. Go LARP around as a medic if you've never tried it. I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Go meet some new friends in the backline and make random guns and ammo. No matter what the population size is in Foxhole, you can still have fun. I also want to personally apologize to any new players out there that may have had a bad experience in the game so far because of our current climate. I promise it does change over time and that we will have great wars once again. Get out and enjoy some short derpy wars while you can before we have another long serious war with the major update. Which one of these popular games should I check out while on this little break? Satisfactory, Space Marines, or Factorio? Let me know in the comments which one's your favorite. Thank you all so much for watching and for your support. Make sure to subscribe for more Foxhole content. Remember to take breaks and have fun out there. Cheers.